Welcome to another episode of Hashtag Boycott for Justice, where we tackle pressing issues of human rights, global solidarity, and the fight against oppression. In doing all of this is definitely by boycotting products that are complicit, or services or companies and brands that are complicit in this ongoing genocide against the people of Palestine. And on today's episode, we are putting the spotlight on action and accountability from the upcoming nationwide protests against Amazon's complicity in human rights violations and the ongoing genocide against the people of Palestine, to the much anticipated launch of the Anti-Apartheid for Palestine South Africa chapter. It's clear that the movement for justice is gaining momentum, and we want to bring everyone along. We'll be discussing also the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants that they put out, the standard one obviously being that of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the growing calls for South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority to step up and take action against apartheid crimes. So yeah, it'll be another interesting episode of Hashtag Boycott for Justice, and joining us is none other than Roshan Dadoo, coordinator of SA BDS Coalition, who will be helping us unpack these critical developments. So stay tuned for a powerful conversation that highlights the importance of solidarity and action in the face of injustice. Roshan, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on this, I think, wonderful concept that we've come up with.
Thanks very much. And yeah, this week, as you said, we're focusing on action that everyone can be part of.
Yeah, and speaking of action, there's a serious protest action which is planned in Cape Town against Amazon. I think it's next week. Can you give us a bit more insight on why Amazon specifically? Why should people getting more information about the role that they are playing, the relationships that they have with the Israeli apartheid regime, and essentially why they also need to be boycotted?
Yes, well, in fact, there's action in Cape Town and Joburg, and I think also Durban on the 29th of November. And it's a combination of campaigns that have come together. So the campaign Save Our Sacred Lands is partnering for the annual Make Amazon Pay, which is an international day of action against the crimes of the world's largest corporation, that's Amazon. We know that there have been, worker abuse of workers, and workers in the States in Amazon warehouses have unionized against the environment, human rights, and indigenous people. So more than 80 organizations are organizing strikes and protests and other actions in more than 30 countries. And so here in South Africa, this Make Amazon Pay campaign is always held on Black Friday. Since 2020. And this year, Black Friday falls also 29th of November on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. So Palestine Solidarity organizations, trade unions, COSATU, SAFTU, and the Anti-Apartheid Conference, which I'll get to in a minute, are coming together to organize protests in those cities, as I mentioned. But I think it's worth looking at the role Amazon is playing in the genocide, actually, because along with Google, it's partnered with Google, and it's the Israeli government has purchased what's called Project Nimbus. And the Israeli Finance Ministry said that the contract is to provide the government, the defense establishment, and others with an all-encompassing cloud solution. So they're actually, it's that link again between big tech and the industrial military complex. And we know that they're using the facial recognition softwares that Google actually has been developing. And Google workers in the States last year went on strike over this because they realized that their work was being used actually they're using that in Gaza as well. They're using it in the West Bank. It's part of the kind of apartheid structure that Israel is using. And they said they don't want their work to be used for this purpose. And most of them were actually fired. And they started the Tech Against Apartheid campaign. But it's also a way of tracking objects and, things that you can see that they're using in the genocide, those ways in which they We know they're targeting civilians because they have the capacity through these kind of things combined with AI now that target things. So when they, when they hit a hospital, they're actually targeting the hospital. So this project Nimbus is a $1.2 billion contract. And so this year we're combining together with the Make Amazon Pay campaign and raising up particularly the role that Amazon is playing and with Google in Project Nimbus in furthering the genocide. So there will be protest actions in Cape Town at 10, and it's starting at 1 Observatory Road in Observatory, and that's a march, I think. And in Johannesburg, there'll be a protest at the US Embassy in the US Consulate in Johannesburg, and also at the US Embassy in Pretoria, both at 2 o'clock. So we hope people will be ready. That's on Friday, the 29th, next week on Friday.
I think very, very important that people attend that one. But just in wrapping up this part of the conversation, are we saying that Amazon itself and all its affiliates and products should also be boycotted?
Well, ideally, yes. I mean, I think we'd certainly look to move towards that. But, like with Google, to have an impact on a boycott campaign, you really need to have, large numbers of people that are going to refuse to use that service. I think here in South Africa, it might be feasible because Amazon's just recently come in here. And also the concern of the Save Our Sacred Lands campaign, which is Indigenous Peoples campaign, is that the warehouse that Amazon has built in Cape Town is actually on sacred lands. So there's many issues coming together around why Amazon is such a bad news for South Africa as well. And it might be possible to implement a boycott of Amazon. To call for a boycott of Google, I think it would be very hard to get people really until there's some alternative, such a search engine and service. It's going to be incredibly difficult. But I think with Amazon moving into South Africa, we should say there are alternatives. We don't really need Amazon here. There are many other similar companies. And I think there we really could target them big time.
No, definitely. And just moving on from Amazon to, I think, a very, very interesting and another important topic, the Anti-Apartheid for Palestine SA chapter launch. Can you give us a bit more insight on this? What is the significance of, launching the Anti-Apartheid for Palestine South Africa chapter, particularly at this moment in time?
Yes, so I think people will remember that in May we held a global anti-apartheid conference. And arising from that, from the declaration at the conference and the program of action that came out of that, was that we're trying to get each country around the world or region to establish anti-apartheid chapters. And so this will be the launch of the South African Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine chapter. And it will start on Thursday afternoon. Those sessions will both be live streamed. So we'll make sure Salaamedia has the link and you can publicize it. There'll be speakers from Palestine as well as from South Africa and messages of support and so on. The following day will be the closed session, the business of, setting up the actual structure, the nitty-gritty of the anti-apartheid chapter. So, of course, BDS is a central part of that, but it goes much broader than BDS, particularly including the churches. And most of the church organizations have expressed support that the individual churches that are part of the South African Council of Churches, that are part of the Evangelical Alliance, will be participating. And we think that's vital because, as we know, the way that Zionism has infiltrated itself into this fake Christian theology that's not just in the more evangelical churches, it's actually playing a role in the mainstream churches. The Anglican Church, although the Southern Africa Anglican churches have been very sympathetic towards Palestine. So, it's very exciting that we can be broadening the campaign and bringing in not only churches, obviously, multi-faith organizations and all sorts of other other groups and organizations that we can, have a much broader reach around the issue of Palestine and exert more pressure also on our own government. As we know, there's still a lot of work to be done there, and in support of our government when it does take the case at the ICJ, it does take a stand in multilateral fora.
No, definitely. I think Roshan, we can now move to I think what has been probably the biggest story of this past week. The ICC issuing those warrants of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister Gallant. The NPA and South Africa as a whole, how do we react to these news, and how significant of a step is it? Because I've been doing a lot of reading, just analyzing, and there are a certain portion of people in the activism space that feel, this is more ceremonial than anything. Israel doesn't subscribe to the ICC. They are not a member, so this, shouldn't hold any water for them. What can we make of this development?
Well, I think it is very significant because we know that the ICC was set up by the Western countries really to protect their interests, and there's not been a case before in which a Western country has been, dealt with like this. And so to see arrest warrants out for Gallant and for Netanyahu, I think is very important. It also puts pressure on the countries that are the Western countries now that are members of the ICC, because they are obliged to arrest these people should they travel to their countries. And I think the Netherlands has already said that they would implement this. They probably have got their nose bloodied over the ridiculous reaction they followed the Israeli government line on the football story when the Maccabi Tel Aviv players were causing trouble and rioting in Amsterdam, and yet the authorities initially took the Israeli government position that no, it was they were the victims. It was somehow the Palestine solidarity organizations and various random citizens who were the cause of it. So I think it is very significant when you look at the press release from the ICC, what they state as being the war crimes. They go into quite some detail, and they mention using starvation as a weapon of war. They even mention the doctors having to perform amputations on children without anesthetics in Gaza. And so I think in a way it kind of also builds the case for genocide. If the ICC is able to say these things, it adds to the international organizations that are really taking a stand, at least on the war crimes that are being committed. But also, I think we have to use it to put pressure where we want to see prosecutions of South Africans who are joining the Israeli occupation forces. And I think there was a protest at the NPA offices in Cape Town this week. And I think we're going to see a lot more protests if there isn't movement from the NPA to investigate and to move towards prosecution. Because these people, as we know, they're boasting about they're joining the IOF on their social media. It should not be that difficult to investigate and to move for prosecutions, because they are breaking the rules of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act.
No, definitely. I think we're going to leave it there for now, Roshan. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thoroughly enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you again next week, Friday.
Thank you. See you next week.
There you have it, Roshan Dadoo, coordinator of SA BDS Coalition, and we tackled a number of issues, but one that you can get actively involved in is the boycotting of Amazon. So all Amazon-related products, all of their subsidiaries, whether it's Amazon Pay, Amazon Prime, Amazon, just everything and anything related to Amazon. I think it is time that it be boycotted itself. And for them, it's not only about the Palestinian issue. I think Roshan made it really important that theirs is a multifaceted boycott that we need to understand. The fact that, well, they are building this big factory on what is sacred land out in the Western Cape, where the Khoi and the San people, kept demonstrating and saying, no, you can't build there. This is where some of our ancestors are buried. This is where we come for certain customs and rituals that we do that are ancient and have been there since the dawn of time. Jenny Hershkovitz, we see you. We see the content, your comments that you're making. I think one that's standing out for me is the DA was instrumental in allowing that monster warehouse to secrete sacred indigenous soil. Definitely, the DA is responsible because, well, they're the government of the day out in the Western Cape, and we know, where their loyalties lie. We know on which side of history they're in, and I think it's only us, the people of South Africa, who can make a tangible difference by hurting companies like Amazon where it matters the most, which is the pocket. We're going to leave it here. It's been another incredible episode of Hashtag Boycott for Justice. We'll see you again next week, Friday, with Roshan Dadoo, where we give you more information about which products and services that you might need to be boycotting, which ones are added on the boycott list and why they're added on the boycott list, and also give you some of the latest developments in the world of activism, particularly Palestinian activism, and where we are. But yeah, we'll see you again next week, Friday. Goodbye.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salaamedia on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.